So in this movie, we're going to take a look at working with Mettle's SkyBox 360 VR transitions inside of Adobe Premiere Pro and why we should use them in 360 workflows. We noted that transitions in Premiere Pro really don't know that we're working in a 360 VR workspace. Neither do effects. This iris round transition that I currently have over my last clip in the timeline, if I go into VR mode and then just sort of move around my scene, notice how this iris doesn't look, let's call it so irisy. It thinks this is flat footage. I'm going to go out of VR mode. Now we're going to see how Mettle is going to come and save the day. So I'm going to my Mettle 360 VR category, and there are a series of 8 effects if you have both transition packs, pack 1 and pack 2. I'm first of all going to just pick a very simple effect from pack 1, the iris wipe. I'm going to select it and then just replace the iris round. And once I do, I don't know if you saw that change, but right away, I have a transition that is designed to work in a 360 VR spherical space. If I select my timeline and then press the left arrow key to move frame by frame throughout this, notice how in the program monitor that updates to show me how this transition is going to work. And on top of that, it works in real time. You can see here that there's no need to render out this effect. It's programmed to work in real time with Premiere without the need to render. Once I select this and then press Shift 5 to bring up my effect controls, you can see that the iris wipe has a few controls here. By the way, if you select it by its name, I can see that I get an on-screen control right here, which actually controls the point of interest, which might be extremely important if you want to direct the user's attention somewhere else rather than the middle of the screen. So if I just select this, I can draw my person's or the user's attention somewhere else within my spherical footage to draw their attention, let's say, over here. Notice how it comes with a built-in feather, and right now the frame layout is set to monoscopic. But those are some of the controls here with a 360 ready transition offered to you from Mettle. Let's take a look at another one. I'm going to replace this iris wipe with a gradient wipe. So I'm going to select this and drag it on to replace this existing transition. And all of a sudden here with the gradient wipe, if I move my left and right arrow key, you can get a sense for how that transition works. I can select it and notice that I can smoothen the gradient. I can add a feather. In fact, I can actually have a layer inside or on another track that happens to be a gradient layer, something that's black and white that would then be the information that I use to wipe from one clip to another. If you didn't want to create that, Mettle gives you a bunch of preset gradients that you can use. So if I go here to gradient image and choose select image, you can see some of the presets here. It's in a very particular area on your system. On my PC, it's under plugins, under the Media Core Mettle Gradient Wipe. This is in the Adobe Common folder. And I'll just come here and choose Abstract 4. I'll choose to open that. And you can see there that the abstract transition did replace that existing kind of Mettle Gradient Wipe logo. And if I move throughout, I can see the abstract nature of that transition. If I wanted something else, let me go back to select transition. There's always room to explore. I'm just going to go to the Mettle text transition preset in the gradient wipe folder. I'm going to choose open. We can see that as I move through here, I've got some Mettle text that appears on the screen, and it's transitioning from one clip to another. One thing you want to keep in mind is that this could be used, or you can use those presets as some information in what is possible if you have an image that transitions from black to white throughout it. So you can find out tons of information online of how you can create your own wipe layers or gradient layers in order to create transitions between your clips. There's a lot to explore here in the Mettle 360 VR category, and one movie really doesn't do it justice. That's why there are tons of resources on Mettle's page where you can get familiar with how their transitions work. But let's just leave off with one more. In fact, I love this transition so much, I'm going to go over here to this cross dissolve, this clip over here, and I want to replace that. Really what I'd like to see is some light leaks. So I'm going to grab the Mettle SkyBox light leaks, and this comes from the transition pack too, and replace my cross dissolve. You can see I get these wonderful light leaks. Now, if I select this transition and look in effect controls, which I can, as you know, bring up with Shift 5, this has a lot of parameters that I can access. And if this is the first time that you're dealing with parameters, don't be intimidated, because once you go down this train, you can't go back. If you go to After Effects, you're going to start to see tons of transitions with just more and more parameters that you're going to need to manipulate. And what I can suggest is just have fun and play. So I'm just going to come in here in the transition and change the leak base hue, which is going to change the color of the light leak. That looks pretty good. And I think there's a lot of color variations here. In fact, you can see all the color variations here from blue to purple. So what I want to do is just change that leak spectrum width to be a lot less, and then I'll have less color variations, or I can drag that up to create more color variations. So I'll just drag that number down to something like 15, and then maybe play with that base hue a little bit more. I think the leak intensity is a bit much, so I'm going to come in here and bring it down to a value of 60. You can see there by just simply typing on the number that I'm able to make that change. I can, of course, increase this exposure to make it a little brighter. I can change the point of rotation. I can actually rotate the angle of how these light leaks appear, looking pretty good. And I was able to do all of this, and there's no red render line that shows up here in the timeline. It's really meant to utilize your systems or your PC's GPU to give you some excellent performance for your 360 VR workflows. I want to suggest to you, if you've taken the time to download all these transitions, you've got to try some of these out. And if you like one, like I really like light leaks, you can always right-click it and set that as the default transition. You can see that updates. If I go into my timeline, I'm going to press the / key to show all of my clips. And then I'm going to press Control-A to select all of the clips on the V1 track. Keep in mind, everything on the audio track is locked because we did that in the last movie. I'm going to go to the sequence menu and just choose to apply the default transition to selection. And now all of those transitions have been replaced with lovely light leaks inside my piece. So I'm just moving my playhead over there. You can see the light leak has replaced that. And that's how easy it is to get up and running with some of Mettle's 360 VR ready transitions inside of Adobe Premiere Pro. I'll see you in the next movie where we're going to jump on the topic of dealing with effects inside of Adobe Premiere Pro.